All right, so the first part of the training talks about what happens medically to the brain and then what happens to people that are affected by dementia. So we're going to define dementia and its symptoms, talk about how functional changes affect a person who has dementia, and describe some caregiver approaches that can help individuals who have dementia. So dementia is the set of symptoms. It's a category. And Alzheimer's disease is the #1 cause of dementia. So vascular dementia is another one of the diseases, and then mixed dementia. These are the 3 main diseases that cause dementia. So 70% of all dementias are caused by Alzheimer's disease. 17% are vascular and 13 other diseases and conditions. What happens when somebody has dementia is there's not only a decline in memory, because as most of us know, as we age, our memory declines, right? It's just the way it is. But it also has to have one of these 3 components. In either or, they have difficulty speaking or understanding the spoken word. They have decreased capacity to plan. Their judgment becomes impaired, and they have difficulty completing complex tasks. And or they have difficulty processing or interpreting what they see. So these are the statistics. Right now, 5.4 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease. 1 in 8 people age 65 and older have Alzheimer's. It's a pretty high number. And every 69 seconds, somebody develops Alzheimer's disease. And by mid-century, they're predicting every 33 seconds somebody will develop it, just because the population is getting older. So what they do now to diagnose Alzheimer's disease is they rule out everything else. And then as we age, infections can cause similar symptoms. Depression can cause similar symptoms. Or if somebody has a thyroid condition or is under the influence of alcohol or another substance. But once you take those away, then the symptoms clear. A family member will take their family member in to their primary care doctor, and he'll do a medical evaluation, rule out any kind of medical issues that are going on, and then he'll generally recommend, he or she would generally recommend that person to a neurologist for cognitive testing, sometimes a psychological consult to make sure it's not depression or anxiety, something like that, and family interviews. From the time somebody's diagnosed, they live an average of 8 years, but it varies widely, and it progresses over time, and there's a gradual decline, and there's a pattern of decline. So there are 3 stages of Alzheimer's disease: early, middle, and late. In the early stage, which is probably the people that you see coming in here, they're still living alone. They can still live alone, but generally what happens is you will notice a memory loss, personality changes. They are having difficulty maybe paying their bills or making calculations. They may not be able to communicate the way they used to be able to. And their judgment becomes impaired. So that's why you get these scammers that target, hopefully, in their eyes, hopefully they can take advantage of someone in the early stage. They may have trouble with daily living tasks. So their house that was maybe once very clean might be messy. Their hygiene might not be as good as it used to be. And they have a decreased ability to concentrate. And then the middle stage, they need 24-hour supervision. So you either see somebody that's being cared for at home by a loved one, or they start entering assisted livings or nursing homes, rest homes. The memory loss increases. They may be up all night. They may sleep all the time. They become easily lost. Now they're having problems with bathing and dressing. They need help in that area. And they become very suspicious and angry, or they can. They confuse time, and like I said before, supervision is needed 24 hours. And then the late stage, they lose everything. They lose the ability to walk, to feed themselves. They start having swallowing problems. They become incontinent. They lose recognition of their family and also eventually their own name. They can't recognize their own name. So there is no single cause. There's a ton of research going on nowadays. So they're finding out a lot, but they haven't fit the puzzle pieces together yet. There is In 90% of all cases, there is no clear genetic link. There are 2 genes that they've identified for early onset Alzheimer's that there is a genetic link. In Alzheimer's disease, the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease are the plaques and tangles. The plaques and tangles stop the neuron pathways from working. So this is the difference in the Alzheimer's brain. Yep, so the normal brain weighs 3 pounds. The Alzheimer's brain at the end stage weighs 2, so it loses 1/3 of its weight. All right, in vascular dementia, like atherosclerosis that you had mentioned, it can also be a stroke that somebody has, or little strokes. It's a little different from Alzheimer's disease because it depends on what part of the brain has been affected as to how it will present. And then mixed dementia has the plaques and tangles of Alzheimer's along with another type of dementia, most commonly vascular. Okay, Lewy bodies is similar to Parkinson's disease. It has a different kind of protein that develops inside the brain. So as Parkinson's disease and Lewy bodies, there's a movement disorder along with dementia. The difference between Parkinson's is the movement disorder happens first, and then with Lewy bodies, the dementia happens first, and then the movement disorder happens. These are reversible dementias, or deliriums, they call it. So drug interactions, urinary tract infections, CHF dementia, other emotional problems. So generally when the symptoms occur suddenly, it's not dementia. It's usually related to something else. Dementia is a gradual process. So the frontal lobe, which is in the front of the brain, that controls personality, speech, alertness, the ability to learn new things, reasoning and judgment, rational thinking, and attention span. So when there's damage in the frontal lobe, you'll see a change in personality. That's like the major thing that happens. And that's tough for family members and friends to see, to watch happen. They can't plan, their judgment becomes impaired. They become easily distracted and unable to start an activity. So for somebody who's caring for someone with frontal lobe damage, here are some of the approaches that they would use. Make sure the person wears proper footwear. Give them step-by-step instructions. Clear pathways. Turn off the radio or TV if they're not paying attention to you. And show them how to do something. So the parietal lobe controls sensory perception, touch, temperature, and pressure on the surface of the skin. So people can't tell when they have to go to the bathroom anymore. They don't feel hungry, or they might forget that they ate and don't feel full. So they can't interpret their body signals. They might not be able to recognize how to use an object. Like they might know something, okay, this is a spoon, and I know that it's a spoon, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know that I have to, that's what I use to eat with. So in that case, you would want to offer toileting. Use hand-over-hand assistant. Provide fluids and snacks for someone who doesn't feel hungry so that they can eat periodically throughout the day, and schedule toileting. The occipital lobe interprets vision. So depth perception goes. Sometimes they'll start seeing things as 3D, so you might see somebody picking at the floor or at designs on wallpaper. Their peripheral vision goes too, and they're not able to process rapid movements. So if you put your hands like this up to your eyes, that's how they see when there's damage in this part of the brain. It's really important for someone who has damage in this part of the brain that we get down on their eye level. The temporal lobe is the language center of the brain. So it allows us to communicate with words and to understand what other people are saying to us. So it interprets, the person may or may not be hard of hearing, but if they have damage in this part of the brain, then they're not going to be able to interpret what they hear, which is called aphasia. Expressive aphasia is when they cannot get out what they want to say, and a lot of people that have had strokes have expressive aphasia. And receptive aphasia is the opposite, not being able to understand what we're saying to them. So we try to, in the early stages when they're not able to think of the different words, we try to fill in the words for them. It helps relieve their frustration. And in the later stages, we want to show them, use visual cues, and reassure them too. Okay, the amygdala processes our emotions and gives us the ability to either express them or not. So for instance, if we got really angry at our boss, we would be able to say, well, I'm not going to just start yelling at them because I don't want to get fired. But if there's damage in the amygdala, it's coming out. They just don't have that ability to process and to understand what they should and should not be doing. So that's when you see somebody that may, for instance, if they're hot, they may just take off their clothes in a public area. So what we want to do when that happens is to distract them. You can't reason with somebody who has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia because they don't have the ability to reason anymore. We have to try to enter their world. So we would want to talk to them about things that they may enjoy talking about and then redirect them in some other area. All right, so the hippocampus, that's the filing center of our brain. So the difference between normal forgetfulness as we age is that we might forget where we put our glasses or our car keys or whatever, but we can retrace our steps until we find it. When somebody has dementia, they have damage in the hippocampus, they can't file those short-term memories away anymore to make them long-term memories. So they can't retrace their steps. They don't remember that they went into the bathroom, or they might have put their car keys in their coat pocket. You know, they don't have that filing system anymore. And they have no sense of time. They get lost easily, even in familiar places. All right, these are some caregiver approaches. It's really important for us when we're with somebody who has dementia to accept the memory loss, to know that's the way it is. And you want to continue to validate their emotions. So if they're angry, it would be really important to say, I can tell you're upset, or I can see that you're mad, and make a connection in that way. So the cerebellum controls primary motor function and muscle movement, and it gives us the ability to maintain an upright posture. So you might see somebody with, especially in later stage dementia, where they have kind of unusual postures. They may be laying down in bed, but their head might be standing up. Or they might not be able to hold themselves upright anymore. They might lose the ability to walk. And then finally, the brainstem connects the brain to the spinal column. And that controls automatic functions like breathing, blood pressure. So when the brainstem is affected, eventually death will occur. So right now, there is no cure for Alzheimer's disease. There are several medications, and these are what they are, that we're using presently. They work for about 50% of the people, and they slow the disease progress down from 6 to 12 months. There are some doctors that feel there might be a residual effect, so they keep people on those medications.